Hello, everyone. This is Lee the Appraiser from the world famous APR57 gallery here in New York City. And we are here with another special guest for our special show, Amazing Appraising, here on the world famous WOR radio station every Sunday. And tonight we are very honored. First of all, my co-host Karishma is going to be joining us today. Say hello to everyone.
Hi.
Okay. And our special guest here today is Mr. Wayne Ensrud. Is that how I pronounce your name correctly?
That's pretty good. I'll take it.
You'll take it. Okay, you'll take it. You're from where? You're from is what? Scandinavian, Norwegian originally?
Norwegian, 100%.
100% Norwegian. How are you? Okay. Anyhow, so as everyone knows, we are now making a stable of some of the most prominent and talented contemporary artists in the world. And we are very fortunate to represent Mr. Wayne here in both our gallery here in the city and virtually around the world through our website and number of the platforms. And he is one of the most prominent artists we have at the moment. And I would like everyone to get to know Wayne a little more in person and a little more of his background. We're doing this as a feature so people can not only understand the art that we sell, but understand the men behind the art or the women behind the art that actually make the art possible. So we're going to ask Wayne, tell us a little about your background, first of all. Where did you grow up and what got you involved in art, etc.?
I grew up in a little town in southwest Minnesota. And was there, of course, until 18, when I went to the Minneapolis School of Fine Art.
As everyone, I don't know if everyone knows this, but there's a lot of like Scandinavians that grew up in Minneapolis, right? I mean,
actually, yes, but I haven't checked the count recently, but we Norwegians thought we were really ahead of everybody, but there were like 46% of Minnesota was German.
German.
Really?
Yeah. So we weren't as large, except in our minds. And the village where I lived, were Swedes, Finnish, and Norwegian.
I don't know, when you came into our store originally, into our gallery with your lovely wife, we talked a little. Did you recall me telling you I'm originally from Minneapolis as well?
Oh, yes, I remember you telling me your family was from some little village, right?
Well, I grew up actually, the crazy thing is I was born in this small town where they're having that big trial. It's called Hennepin County. That's where I was actually, that's where I actually was born. And I grew up in the south side of Minneapolis, and my sister and relatives still live in a place called St. Louis Park.
Oh, that's very swanky.
Well, I don't know how swanky it is, but
so when I was there, young, it was a high-toned place.
Okay, so great. So we have the same hometown. So tell us a little more about yourself.
Oh, I'm handsome and charming, and rich, and love life. But all of that comes out in the act of painting. I was lucky when I went to that school. They had a marvelous program, and they invited top-line artists often to come visit, and sometimes stay in residence for a short while. So I met the great Oskar Kokoschka, the Austrian expressionist, and in one way to keep going through school, I worked in the lunchroom for the students, and I chose to do the dishes. And Kokoschka would, he was giving these lectures, but he would come in and have a cup of soup or something and sit with us. And but I was too shy. I could hardly pronounce his name, but they had an exhibition of paintings of Kokoschka that belonged to local collectors. I had no idea who he was, and didn't realize this large collection of paintings owned there locally. But I'll jump a bit. I graduated, and I had two instructors, both from New York City, and they left the school while I was a junior and went to Stanford. And they asked me to come along with them. They thought I had some talent, but I had the scholarship and I was in love. And so I stayed through the term. And then when I graduated, the invitation was still open. So I went to California. They lived in Woodside, just south of San Francisco. And I was there for a number of days, just sleeping on their porch, not knowing what I was going to do, not having much money. It was November, and a friend of theirs from Berkeley came for a day just to visit and talk with me. So she said, well, I think I can get you a little job up in Berkeley. And I said, I'll take it. I'd never heard of Berkeley, but I was on my way to Berkeley, and she arranged for me to get, I remember, a room for $35 a month. Our father was a professor, and then the job was working for George Jensen, the silverware people. And it was,
for people who don't know, George Jensen is was similar to your background. He was a Danish. He was probably considered one of the finest silversmiths in the world from Denmark, correct?
That's correct. And my job was to be a salesman. I didn't grow up particularly rich, just a normal family, but my mother, being an only child, I guess, my clothes were handmade for me. In a little town, I picked out fabric and they measured me, and all this went to Philadelphia. And so I dressed, I had been a football player in school, and they thought I could go on to really as a profession. But I was injured, and the knee was taken out and never put back together. Anyway, so I had still the good body and beautiful clothes, so I looked okay. And these charming co-eds would come in to purchase expensive items for the holidays for their family. So I would usually, if they were the pretty ones, say, let's go up to Blake's restaurant up the block and have a glass of wine and discuss this. Well, one day a gal came in and she bought a small little cocktail table, and I had to deliver it to her apartment. And she said, well, what do you really do? And I said, well, I'm kind of an artist. I was just out of school. So she said, I had a friend at personnel at the university. Well, I'd like to speak to her. So I did. And she said, we have a number of artists on staff, and someone's leaving, I can get you an appointment. And I got the appointment and I got the job. So I began there doing graphics and some film bit, and successfully, happily, because in the school we weren't trained for anything commercial, not in that school of fine art, right? So you had no way to get a job, right? You had drawings of naked girls, and that was about it. So something in me came out, and I was able to be successful with these designs. And then the film department called me, and I had a meeting, and they wanted me to come over and be the art director of film and television for the 9 campuses of California. But the office was there in Berkeley, so I took the job. And again, because I was making it up, my whole life has been just sort of taking on jobs that I know nothing about, but then somehow with perseverance and some focusing, I was able to not usually, but always come through. And so then I had an opportunity to do KQED, was the local station there, TV station, and IBM had chosen our staff to do a film.
What year was it? What year was it? What year?
It's called The Computer in the Mind of Man.
What year around?
And it must have been about 1958.
Whoa.
58.
58.
I'm only 20. I'll be on Easter Sunday this week. It'll be my birthday.
Oh,
So,
happy birthday
it's
in
called
advance.
the resurrection, right? So I'm really ancient, but don't tell everybody.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And um, okay, lauding myself. We did the first film, and I was asked to do some animation, in which I had never done.
Mhm.
And so I invented how to do imagination very quickly. And so I was just winging it. And so they sent the first film back to New York, head of IBM. And I thought, I'm finished here. I might as well pack my bag. So I came to the office one morning and saw the producer, and he said he'd seen George, who was the director. And I said, no, I just got here, but I'm already packed to go. So I went in to George, I can't think of his last name now. He said, have you seen this letter from IBM? And I said, no, I haven't seen it. And he said, well, here it is. And it said, who is the genius art director raised his salary? So I stayed on, and we did 7 films. And I had said to them, I'm not really a commercial guy, but I said, there's supposed to be 3 films. So I said, if they go further, I get more money, right? So we negotiated for that. So this ran for 7 months. And then I had more money than I'd ever had. And so I decided to go to Europe.
Wayne, are those movies that you made, were those animations?
Lisa's looked up on, she's right next to me. Oh, what are you looking at? Yes, yes. But what's, it's on the, it's on Google, Lisa tells me.
So were they in fact animations or?
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, the same system, if you will, of Walt Disney.
I was going to
know
say,
anything about this, but
I was going to
who,
say that, right? Yeah. Who were that? It was Disney and what? Hanna-Barbera? Those were the 2 guys, those were the 2 companies that did animation.
yeah, and the system really is what you do is you work on a piece of paper acetate, right? And so you have a board with 2 pegs on it, and you buy the acetate, and the holes are there, right? So you can put them down in the peg. And so for the animation, you have to draw 12 drawings a second, you know, to get that smooth movement, right? And so luckily I was trained in music, so I had some sense of, okay, a film time is totally different than real time. In other words, you go to the movie and you see Errol Flynn, let's say, in San Francisco, and then they what call a cut. He's in Burma. And you accept that, this time factor. But now you have to figure out in animation when Donald Duck or anybody moves, you have to draw hundreds of these acetates because each movement is one acetate, right? And for to do the next movement, you have to draw the next part. So
Can you give us, look, can you give us layman's an idea here? So if you did a 30-minute cartoon, I don't know, I guess the standards were probably less, 15 minutes, right? So if you did a 15-minute cartoon, how many images did that take you to draw? How many images are
I couldn't give you a number, but it would be thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah, so the Disney thing was, okay, you'd have the main art director who would sort of design that shot, if you will. And then they had another group of people who did all those movements, right? And that was black and white. And then came the coloring. And usually they wanted pregnant women because they were calm and focused. It's amazing. But they did the fill in because you have to fill in all the color sheet by sheet. So it's really labor intensive.
So the artist actually just did the outlining? Like the original?
Yeah, that's one set of people just does the outlining, and then the last set is the color. Right, different group of people. In
Interesting.
my case, I was all of them. I didn't have a staff to do it. I had to do everything. And I just dreamed it up. And what I did was, because I didn't know, if you might call it, the rules. So like in this computer animation I was doing, computer mind, they had a little part called binary system, which I had no idea what that was. So we had a lot of mathematical things going on here. So like say, they would give me the script, and you can put that on a timer, which means that the frame is done in frames. We can call frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so let's say Johnny went up the hill with a pail. So I would take the word Johnny, the word pail, sounds crazy, but then I would count the frames when Johnny comes on, and I didn't have a Johnny, so I would draw a little creature, right? And so we got into doing 3s and 9s and 10s, these numbers. And my thing was to make it a visual, you see? And it's so abstract, like what would you do? So I would do this just on the spot, right there spontaneously,
Wow.
the studio. Might say 3, and I'd look around and somebody was smoking cigarettes. So I would put down on the pad 3 cigarettes.
That's very
And
interesting.
then it said by 7, and I'd look around and find somebody with eating jelly beans or something, and I put 7 jelly beans down there.
So it all
And
came out
that's
like on
pretty,
the spot from your imagination and like your surroundings.
yeah, it was
Wow,
just
that's
craziness.
amazing. Yes.
And because I know I had no drawings for those parts,
Yes.
right? When they're
Yes.
that abstract. And that's what went to New York, and
Wow.
I thought I'd be fired. And of course, they came back with calling me a genius and keep
Uh-huh.
going. You know,
Wow.
so
So I
but
was
later on in New York, jumping a bit, when I left there, right? And so because of my success there, and all of these films were shown in New York City
Mhm.
and won awards. So the network, ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, all
NBC
contacted
also.
me to come to New York City
Yeah.
and work. And I had no interest in that. I was thinking about maybe being a painter. Maybe I just came out of this art school, but I had been really stimulated by this guy, Oskar Kokoschka. So I decided, I think I better go see this guy. Right?
Yes.
I'm jumping a little time here, but then I knew he lived in this little town in Austria called Villeneuve. So I went there, and of course,
Well,
the phone
wait,
book.
just for a second. For
Uh-huh.
all the people who don't know, why don't you just tell us who Oskar Kokoschka was? And can you tell us a little about him or no?
Yeah, I have a load of things, but Lisa's reaching over here. I just had to write something about him the other day, and so I will read it directly.
Lisa, do you want to say hi to everyone here? Just wave and
Here
say
she
hello.
Hi.
This is Wayne's lovely wife, Lisa, who
Beautiful.
we actually met Miss Lisa prior to meeting Wayne, right?
Right. I just kind of wandered in out of curiosity to your shop because Wayne's watch battery had died. And I
Okay.
think it was serendipity and meant to be. And then you and I just started talking, and then we were talking about the new artists you're representing, and then
One thing led to another, and I think within a couple hours, Wayne was in our gallery, right?
that's right. And he was waiting for
something-
me. And so that's when you said, I said, well, he's right outside. Let me bring him in. You can meet him. So voila,
Wow.
here we are.
And I only met you, I think, because there were like 2 or 3 things we had to do on your watch, and I decided, my assistant was taking care of you, and I said, you know what? Let me just explain to her what had to be done. And I walked over there, and from there we met. That was great,
Oh, that's right. That's right. Your sister. That's right.
right? I
Yeah.
remember that.
And everybody is so kind and lovely in your shop. They were just
Well, thank you so much. I can say the
Yeah,
same about you
and
guys.
it's just such a fascinating place too, because you walk in, and I had no idea you had all that artwork on the wall. You know,
Mhm.
it was just tons of artwork. I said, oh my God. I said, look at this. This is
Wow.
fascinating.
And for those who don't know, Wayne and Lisa, we just like started getting involved and representing contemporary artists when she came in a couple months ago. So I have to say, hopefully it was fate on a good
I
side.
agree. And then when you told us that you were from Minnesota, I almost fell off the chair. I was like, what?
I can't make that up. I mean,
We were laughing. So I was like, out of here in New York City, what are the chances of that happening?
slim to none. Slim to none.
Oh, that's not it.
You
Okay,
tell us a little about Mr. Oskar, yes.
okay. Also, I'll throw in a plug for my beautiful wife here. I think to talk to you next week and get her involved in your system there.
Sure, we'd love to
great.
have Miss Lisa in our system.
Yeah, I think she would be surprisingly wonderful. With all her online on Instagram.
I don't think she'd be surprisingly wonderful. She may be wonderful, but it wouldn't be surprised. Okay.
Now you asked about Kokoschka. Now I don't have written. I'll tell you my knowing Kokoschka, but I can't tell you all of his accolades, in specifics off the top. But here's something that I wrote, which is called a brief summation of what Kokoschka awakened in my sleeping soul. Art has a mission to perform. It should be a means of communication between man and man, the same purpose as language. I do not believe in art for art's sake, a pretty package, but empty inside. A painting should be a means of establishing contact with others. The artist has a responsibility to envision and embrace the whole world in a spirit of love, to see and rejoice in the grand unity of creation. One paints for the spiritually starving, for an audience of the blind. A good painter should be able to paint anything, but a great painter is the servant of compulsions which are ordained by the very structure of the soul. Artists are not interested in policies, but in values. This is our field of battle. I believe in the miracle of the great blinding moment of illumination when the human spirit, radiating light and laughter, joy and love, nourishes the intuition. When your spirit trembles with joy, then art will find its true form and place. And the artist can play like a fountain without strife, without even trying. Art has no intention, that is to say, no theology, no theory or system. Art is a purifying factor. It preaches nothing. The essence is joy and love, which unravels the illusions, intentions, and relaxes the soul. The secret of art's healing power is in the viewer and not the artist, the only means to reaction. I could go on, but I don't think you've had enough of that.
That's
Now,
very
as far as
beautiful.
Kokoschka, okay, he's born in Austria, but next door to Czechoslovakia. So although he's Austrian, the name Kokoschka is Czech. Okay, so we go way back about he was born in 1886. So when he was a student in the craft school he was about 19, so in Vienna, he was noticed by the famous architect of the time named Adolf Loos. So some of the outstanding students were allowed to exhibit at the once a year or twice a year. They had an exhibition of famous artists there in that area. And Gustav Klimt, known to many, was one of the instructors. And so Kokoschka was studying there, and he was invited to show some pieces at this exhibition. And so when the head people came along, the teachers, to check on everything, Kokoschka had to lock the doors to where he wouldn't let them in. Apparently, Klimt said he's a little strange, but he's fine. But then when they opened the doors, all hell broke loose. And
Wow.
he had painted these huge panels which have totally disappeared and never been photographed. And it was all very sexual. And then he had done a plaster head painting all the veins of the face on the plaster. And the prince of the Habsburgs came to this viewing and saw this and immediately had it shut down. And the papers got hold of this. And so then, according to the prince, Kokoschka will never be able to teach anywhere in Austria. Adolf Loos came to him and said, you keep painting and I'll support you. And so he continued doing what he was doing, which were essentially at that time portraits. And then Alma Mahler, the grand lady of the time in the arts, was married to Gustav Mahler, the musician. Well, Mahler died. She was fascinated with young Kokoschka. She was maybe 10 years older. Anyway, they had an affair. And then came the First World War. And so she got pregnant and then had an abortion without telling him. And he was very upset and wasn't seeing her. And so he decided to go to war. And as he told me, he said, I was too weak for the infantry, too stupid for artillery. So they put me with the horse cavaliers. And he said, I didn't know how to ride a horse. Anyway, Loos came along, and you could only do this if you could bring your own horse. So he did this huge painting, which hangs here in Manhattan at the Guggenheim, called Brides of the Wind. It's a huge painting, and it shows Kokoschka and a lady who's obviously Alma Mahler on a craft in the stormy sea. So you can read the whatever emotions that he's putting out, that he's really lost, and here's this beautiful lady crossing the sea. Anyway, they sold that, got the horse, and he went off to war. Well, he was wounded and was shot in the, well, first of all, because he told me this, he's written it to me. He was wounded and fell in the field, but the pistol was connected to his tunic with a string, if you will. And when the Russians were coming through, they were bayoneting the fallen soldiers. And they came to Kokoschka, and Kokoschka said, well, I wasn't angry at this young guy. But anyway, he said, the steel pierced my tunic and my breast, and he shouted, Eureka, blood was gushing out of my eyes, nose, and ears. And I was alive. Anyway, he survived that. But he was mentally unstable. And so he was in Dresden, where he got a teaching job. He was very young. And then he went to a seamstress, found, and asked her to make him a giant doll, or life-size doll. And so it took 9 months. He kept sending her drawings of all the intricacies and delicate parts of the body. And 9 months later, the doll arrived in Dresden. And so he unpacked the doll. And then he had the dresses made for the doll. He took the doll with him when he would go to the opera or any musical thing, who would be his date. Now, today you might lock him up because here he was riding around in a carriage with this doll and taking the doll to the restaurant and so on. But one night they got pretty drunk at a party and they buried the doll. I don't know what the ceremony was, but somebody walking by saw through the hedges and called the police that somebody had just been killed. And the police came and dug up, there was the doll. I'm just giving you a little sense of this guy Kokoschka, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
of course, he went on by finding a marvelous dealership and became very, very famous in that part of the world. Not in the French world, although he did live in there and studied there. He was over with a whole other set of values in the Eastern world.
Mhm.
Okay, then here I come. Um, I figured I didn't know much about painting, but I felt I wanted to paint. So I can't even imagine I did what I did, but I went to that village and I couldn't find him, and I was in line in the store, but most people there speak 3 or 4 languages. So when I got to the cashier, I said, I'm looking for this famous artist, Oskar Kokoschka. And she said, oh, well, the lady in front of you's father is Kokoschka's gardener. So she explained this to the lady, who then said that I should follow her car and she would point out the Kokoschka house, which she did. I went back into the city, the village, and I bought this huge bouquet of flowers for his wife. And I knew from reading about him that he liked to drink scotch. So I got a bottle of scotch. And then I went, I parked the car, and the gate was open, and I got to the door and I saw the little nameplate that Kokoschka. So I knew it was in the right place. So I rang the bell, and his wife, they were both over 6 feet tall. And so his wife sort of looked down at me with a deep voice, said, what can I do for you? And I said, I want to see the maestro. And she said, well, why? And I bumbled this whole thing about Minneapolis and meeting him. And so she said, well, come in and I'll see if he's available. And she ushered me into a library. And in a few moments, the man himself came and stood in that doorway and just looked at me and looked at me. And then he said, oh, Minneapolis, in the kitchen. Yeah. And so I gave them the bouquet and the wine, the scotch. So he said, well, let's have a drink. He always said together. I didn't smoke, but if so, he'd say, let's have a cigarette together. That was always together. So finally, he said, well, what can I do for you? What are you doing here? And I said, I'm here to give you my life. And on it went from there. And so for 15 straight years until he died in 1980, I would come, save my money here. I was teaching then. I was teaching at the Great Neck Community Arts Center. Also in Great Neck is the Arundel School, public school. And I was teaching animation at Pratt Institute all at the same time. Right? And so it's my summers that was free. So I would save my money and I would go and I would go painting up in the mountains and such of Switzerland.
Was this before you went to New York or after?
No, after I went to New York.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I was doing, well, in New York, I jumped on there, but back, okay, I went to New York
Yes.
and
You were art director there, right? For ABC,
well,
CBS.
no, yeah, well, I did commissions for all of them, but I took the position of actually art director of PBS, Channel
Oh,
13, which was, PBS was only 3 years old.
yes.
So
You
I
were the
was the second,
executive art director.
yeah, I was the second art director there. I think I was, what, 26 years old?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when I went to Berkeley, I was only 23.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of mildly brilliant in my 20s.
Yes. Because I read your biography and I was amazed. You've achieved so much. You were the youngest art director of motion pictures and television when you were at Berkeley in California, right?
Yeah, that when I was 23.
Yes. And
I
then,
was there for a few years.
yeah, that
And
was
then
amazing.
that's when I did the computer in the mind of man, which,
Oh, yeah. That was an award-winning IBM series.
yeah. And that's when the New York people became aware of me
Yes.
and invited me. Well, I didn't want to work commercially because I didn't want to sell products. And PBS came along and they all offered me a job.
Yeah.
But I did work for all the people on commission, special things. But my job was at PBS. And I turned that table upside down and brought a whole new graphics approach
Yes.
to film. and I mean, to television.
Mhm.
And that's when ABC called me up and
Mhm.
said there's going to be this Gemini space program
Space program. Oh yeah, yes.
when a guy named Major White, he was the first man to walk in space, not
Mhm.
out in air, space, not on the
Yes.
ground.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so I'll be quick about this. So it was a Friday afternoon. I had a meeting at ABC, and they just gave me some photographs of the unit, the capsule, black and white, and then a black and white shot of the astronauts in their costumes. And so I went home and put on coffee and some music, and here I'm working with acetate now, right? So they
Mhm.
said, okay, what we've got is because they weren't going to photograph it and bring it back to Earth in case this guy just went off into space, right? And so I had to animate in factuality what it looked like,
Mhm.
right? Now they had a camera in the capsule to photograph it, but would only be seen when they came back home.
Mhm.
So they said, okay, Major White, leaves the capsule and he does like 3 forward rolls and he does this and that. And he has an umbilical cord, so he hopefully wouldn't fly away. And so I sat down there and I looked at this capsule and I said, where in the hell's the door? And I had no phone number to call anybody. So it
Yes.
looked like the little shape on the top there. And I said, well, I guess that's the door. So then I said, okay, I've got to open the door. Which way is the door open? Left, right, back. So I decided I'm just going to open going back. Now,
Mhm.
I have some of the drawings on some of these things. So I can't remember going back to Lee there, how many motions I took drawing just that door going back.
Wow.
So
That
because of my musical training, I would just close my eyes and go 1001, 1002, 1003,
that's very
you know,
fascinating.
because if you did it too fast, there'd be a blink, nobody would see it.
Oh
I
yes.
had just guessed it all these times.
Yeah.
And now, okay, the major's coming out. And I'm like, which way is he coming out? You know? And
Yeah.
so I just made a decision. He's going over this side. Remember, this had to be drawn, all these little drawings, but they had to be actually physically like a photograph.
Mhm.
This was no abstraction. Some people see my paintings and don't know that I can draw, you see, but I'm probably a better draftsman than a painter or whatever. Anyway, and then I got him out there in the space doing what he's doing, and I could see through all these acetates, this umbilical cord. I was looking like a snake dance, going across the sky. So I
Mhm.
had to erase them all, just taking a guess, and I barely moved it, No.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had to have this done, and in the can, photographed by Monday, because the shot, the Gemini shot, was on Wednesday.
Mhm.
So nobody saw this stuff, right? I just did it and then handed it over. And then they just had it. And then I was invited on that day to sit with all these, luminous people, very famous in many ways, to watch this. So I was nervous. I thought I should just go hide. I had no idea what it looked like.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so because I couldn't do that many acetates uh, on a movement. You've seen earlier films with Charlie Chaplin, they're very jerky,
Yes. Yes.
that thing, right? So that means there are fewer drawings in the movement.
Mhm.
See, so to make it that smooth way, like Disney, but I can only shoot in what I call fours, you
Mhm.
know, and so it had this jerkiness to it.
Mhm.
But what happened was, I guess God was looking after me because they were watching this thing and it was all jerky.
Oh, it was.
From not what I did, but when they came back
Yeah.
with the film, that's exactly how it looked. So they
Mhm.
thought I was brilliant. Of course, it was just me,
Oh,
you know. So they hired me to do all the Gemini space.
amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. But I'm curious, you achieved so many things. Well, being the art director, and in animation. So what made you decide? You were so successful. So what made you decide to go to
I
like
guess,
meeting
art,
Oscar
yes,
and then going to, you were in Switzerland and spent 25 years with him.
Yeah, well,
All of this
it's,
behind. So
what
what
it's a
was the
simple answer. Everything I was doing was a collective effort.
mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, when you're an art director, you're dealing with a staff,
Yes.
or you're dealing with photographers. You also, for me, okay, what happened was producer would come to me at the PBS with a script,
Mm-hmm.
not for me to enjoy the script. I just said, okay, then he'd bring the director in, right? And he talked to me and said, okay, these are the areas that need animation.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I wasn't free. No, I wasn't on the top of the pole. I was down, for you got the producer, director, whoever, and then the artist down here. We come along to put the pieces together, but
Uh,
it's a collective thing. When you're a painter, it's just you and you. That's it.
oh, I
That's
see.
it.
So
Yeah.
you wanted
And
to
so
have
I'd spent all
freedom
these years
and
being successful, as you say, but
yes.
collectively. And the more,
Okay.
because by now I had done a lot of, if you want to call it art,
Yeah.
I'd done a lot of drawings and watercolors, and and actually what I brought to PBS was something painterly. Although remember, I'd never been really a painter. I'd
Mm-hmm.
never studied painting. In the art
wait,
school, I studied only graphic design. I'd
Mm-hmm.
never had a painting class in my life, and so I went to this great man,
Mm-hmm.
and what happened was a trip to Europe. Just before that, I did a number of trips before I did what I'm talking about. And when I talked to Kokoschka, I said, I went to when I went through 14 countries, all around.
Yeah, you traveled a lot.
And I would go to, what I did was go to museums,
Okay.
you see, and just look at art. And so I saw paintings, of course, you know, maybe in Munich, I saw Bruegels, not not two Bruegels, but 20 Bruegels, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so then these Klimts, I saw all these paintings, and I realized I would get, some of them would give me a shiver of really excitement. And
Mm-hmm.
and what I couldn't figure out, I was talking to Kokoschka, I said, well, but all these painters do different things. So what is it that is making my bell tingle, right?
Yes,
So I
yes, yes.
figured he must have a secret, right? So I said, you got
Exactly.
to tell me
Uh-huh.
what it is that I can look at a Bonnard and have that emotional response, and I can look at a Bruegel, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so he didn't have an answer for me, which I was sad about, right?
Okay.
Uh, I know there was something, if you know the golden means, this goes back to the Renaissance,
Mm-hmm.
where they figured out geometrically. Okay, I'll make it simple. So we're working where the basic structure would be square, rectangle, triangle, circle, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you look at a Madonna by Raphael, if you're going to pinch it in your head, right? Okay, so the Madonna's head at the peak, right? And if you watch it, you come down the drapery to the corners down below. You got a triangle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he has a horizontal in the back, which is bringing in two rectangles. And then the child's head is a circle. You follow me? So
Yeah.
if you just took the Raphael that you're looking at, put tracing paper on it, you could do exactly what I did. So
Mm-hmm.
they did it the other way. They made the diagram, right? And then fit the object into that structure,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's not stiffly done like modern painters would do, right? But
Yeah.
this was called a golden mean. So this was a basic of to make a good structure. Whatever you're doing, you would fit it into one of those geometric forms or the combination, which I find stifling, and I think it's why it didn't finally last. All you can still use it, of course. And so Kokoschka painted very spontaneously. Was
Mhm.
he didn't do sketches and so on. He would just take the brush and dive in. And so that was part of what he taught me. And so he was primarily a painter of people, but you know, a lot of portraits, but
Portraits.
nothing in the nude department at all, really. And the other way, places. So he painted all these famous cities and places, but in a way that nobody had done. So he was like an impressionist who was an expressionist.
Yeah, it was very, paintings are very expressive, and yours are too, and very colorful. And
well, color, yes.
yeah,
I
with
also,
color and the way the space that the way you use the space in your paintings.
you've been looking.
Of course, yes, I've been looking.
Well, thank you, because
Yes, it's very impressive.
people
The
don't really,
colors.
people come in to my studio and happily buy paintings, but nobody says anything. They just hand me a check.
Okay. Now I took a look at it and I couldn't stop looking. There are so many, so impressive, and it's different. The way it's like the space that you use in your paintings, and it's always colorful. Very
Okay,
colorful
you hit on two things: space and
and
color.
color.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
So what is the motivation behind that?
okay, okay. About 12 years ago, something like that, Lisa prepared a little folio for me, put it that way, as a surprise, just something she put together. But it was really showing me doing landscapes, seascapes, cityscapes, figures, portraits, mythology, religion, you know, about, I think there were 16 different subjects.
Yes.
And so in this, she put together what she could find from some photos and pieces existing, like maybe 6 or 8 pieces, you know, of landscapes alone. Then you turn the pages and you see 6, you know, cityscapes. So I looked at this and I said, my God, this is what I've been doing. So I was painting as through Kokoschka. I painted from what I could see. Now, I can't say imagination. There's a certain image making. That's what the word means, to make image.
Yeah.
But I was still working with the object, right? Okay, now I jumped. The Guggenheim Museum was originally titled the Museum of Non-Object Art.
Okay.
Instead of saying abstract, which confuses everybody. What do you mean? But like say it's non-object, okay. In my abstraction, if you call it that, it's a non-object painting. It has nothing to do with an object, right? And so that was a little difficult because after seeing what I had done, I took stock of myself that, well, in the area of realism, I won't surpass Vermeer. You know, and then there are modern people now who do the photo kind of realism, right? But with Vermeer, I'm a student of that past world, if you will. And then the next other area that came along was called Surrealism. It's a funny word. It doesn't really very mean anything. You might use the word fantasy.
Fantasy.
Right? Chagall would fit into that realm. But then it carried off to Ernst and many others who turned it into pure abstraction. You know, but it's still called surreal. Dali is probably the most famous person in that. They're still working with a realism, but they're calling it surrealism, like a heightened realism, if you will.
That's very interesting.
And so I played with that, but I wasn't really fast because remember their thing was structured on dreams. You were supposed to. Freud had become very famous because nobody had ever used this word, the unconscious, the subconscious. So now we're saying, okay, pay attention to your subconscious, right? So when you dream, and so the thing was, okay, as soon as you wake up, write out on a paper what your dream was.
Oh, wow.
So when you get up in the morning, totally, you're going to paint your dream.
Okay, so it comes from within, like from inside, and that's what you put on paper. So it's more in the direction of feeling and emotions.
Well, dreams are disconnected, right? I
Yes.
mean, many things go on in the dream,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And so they added that into those paintings.
Very
But
interesting.
yet you can't, the conscious mind in the morning is going to take over anyway.
Yes, of course.
Like somebody that I appreciate tremendously is Magritte,
Mm-hmm.
great Belgian painter,
Mm-hmm.
who is very subtle in that realm. But when it gets really into nightmare time,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of this was nightmare time. So I've never been drawn into the dark corners. Maybe when I get really old, like Goya, I can do that. But I don't think so because Goya actually experienced these horrible violence and killings, and he actually saw people hanging in trees and being decapitated and so on. Now, I have not had anything like that, so it's hard for me
Yes, because
to
I see
express it with
paintings
any
are
kind of
colorful.
conviction to anybody. You know,
Yeah.
I know things go on, but anyway, I've left that. There are plenty of painters painting the dark side, so let them go. I'm not saying anything about it. Let them do it,
Yes.
but I'm not going to play my music. I'm with Mozart, right? You know,
Yes.
I'm in the happy side of the thing. I'm a lyricist, and so then okay, we go to the next step is constructivism, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a person who's interested in structure. You can see it in a child when they draw, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we call it architecture, if you will.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
But the head pin there is a guy named Mondrian.
Mm-hmm.
You know his work, right? All the little boxes and squares and all these colors. Well,
Oh.
nobody
Mm.
he did the whole trick. I mean, there was nothing left except Ad Reinhardt finally came up with black on black and white on white. But looking at that, I thought I couldn't. People are doing this right now. Young people are doing these little squares and whatever, whatever. Like they've never seen Mondrian. Like he already wrote the whole book. So I thought, me,
Okay.
there's nothing here for me to do. I can't do
Okay.
Vermeer. I can't do this. And so the final thing in these units that artists do is called expressionism. And this
Oh.
is where it's a personality thing that's going on here, just
Mm-hmm.
not a technique. It's first of all who you are. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, an architect is really interested in structure, detail, right?
Yes.
And a person gets into the dream thing, right? Or
Mm.
really a photorealist type person, right? Okay, I'm all of those really, you
That's
know,
beautiful.
and yet when I hit Kokoschka, I mean, I found like a home for me. In other words, let's say I'm in the south of Spain and it's August and really hot. So I paint a little postcard to send to you, and I paint the little village and whatever. And I paint the sky red.
Ah, because it's hot. Oh, yes,
Hey,
of course.
you got it. And
Yeah.
so that's what Van Gogh really kicked it off,
Wonderful. Yeah.
using colors to express the emotion that the artist is feeling,
Yes.
looking at. If I was painting you,
Yes.
in other words, you giving off vibrations. People never think about that, but
Yeah.
color is vibration moving in space.
Yeah.
Scientifically proven now. In other words, you put the painting on the wall, the red, you can measure how far that will before you can't see it. Like when you go to the theater, says exit, it's red, right? Stop
Yes. Yes.
red.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
red is like a bugle playing,
Makes sense. Uh-huh.
right? So it goes really travels a long way. But the dark browns and purples on boom, 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 the bass sound don't
Yeah.
travel so far. But in any room where you're surrounded there in Lee's studio, right? You're living in a sea of color,
Mm-hmm.
which are actual pulsations, vibrations in moving in space right to you and through you, just like sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's not sitting over on the wall.
Yeah.
It is, but it's radiating out. So the point is, it has an effect upon you. And I believe that art, particularly painting color, has a healing power. I'll get into that, but I'm happy to say Lisa discovered recently, picked up something on the internet. So Lamoise, I think, he's a French neurosurgeon, and he's written this book on the power of art and color in healing. And so it's in French right now. So I don't know, but I've been doing this, I've been writing about this. I think I sent one to Leo about the power of art, coloring, and so on. And so I'm jumping here. So I'm really an expressionist, but it's all based on realism, surrealism, and constructivism. So I have all those as my bottom to hold me up as a structure. And then I can let fly on top of that. But since I wasn't going to go in the areas that had already been conquered, the only thing left for me at that point, I wasn't going to do performance art and so on, right? But it was, I had never really done what we'll call abstract art. I'd seen it, obviously Pollock and de Kooning and Freelander and Joan Mitchell, my hero. And so at that time, the museum here of modern art was having a show about 3 floors devoted only to what we call abstraction. So I went there, and of course, and so with each painter, there were maybe 3 pieces, right? But I would go through it, and I thought, there's a lot of crap here. You know, I'm not really thrilled, but there were a few, and Joan Mitchell was one that grabbed me. And so I started researching her, and then exhibitions of hers came along, and I was devouring that, and I'm thrilled every time I see anything that she does. And so, okay, I said I got to go down this road, but I don't want to look like de Kooning. I don't want to be, you know, a clone. And somebody says, "Oh yeah, that looks like so and so."
Yes,
and
you
so,
want to have your own.
You know, well, I didn't know how do you create yourself to be original. You see,
Yes.
you know, because you do something anytime, and they say, "Oh yeah, that kind of looks Picasso, right?" And
Okay,
maybe
yeah.
it does. So what I did, not knowing how to do this, I went to my studio and I took a painting of mine and I hung it upside down. And I did a copy of my painting upside down. But when I'm looking at it upside down, you don't think of the shapes of boats or the horizon line. You know, you just see clumps of shapes and colors, right?
Yes.
And so I kept doing that. And finally, I got looser with it and freer with it. And so it came finally that I didn't have to look at something, right? I could just go up to a blank canvas. And then I became acutely conscious of what had been there all the time, but I wasn't conscious of it.
That's very
I'm not going to get religious here, you know, try not to, but I realized that these images and these strokes and stuff came to me as impulses. I might like say a voice was talking to me.
Yes.
But I'm not sure. It seems like that. And so now I just set out the paints and put the canvas up there, and I just stand there for a moment, and this little voice, this impulse says red, and I just take a brush, and it guides me. It's very fast. Like which brush? I don't ponder that brush, that red, because I have many reds, and I just go shrug across the canvas, right? And then I walk back about 20 feet and look at it. And immediately it says blue. I go up, I do the blue, and I hit the canvas with blue. And this keeps on going, this little back and forth thing, as long as the intuition, which is the channel.
Okay.
I don't want to use the word God or Muhammad or, you know, but there's a source.
There is a source.
Intuition, right? So I'm now realizing that I have been able to tune in to this source, through the intuition speaking to me, who's really directing me. Right? I'm not looking at objects anymore. That's different because you follow the object, right?
Yes.
The thing was confusing was, what are you going to paint when you don't have anything to look at?
Yeah.
That's what I was fighting with, right? And then this started happening to me. And the training through Kokoschka is the colors, the bright colors.
Yes.
With him, I was always fascinated from the very beginning when I would see him, how fresh the canvases were, right? So I was asking him, like, what paint do you use? I
Mhm.
guess they were secrets because he never told me. He said, "Oh, I use all kinds,"
Oh,
and
yeah.
then he just cut
Okay.
it down there. You knew there was not following it up. I was, I praised him so much. I wasn't going to push him,
Yes, yes, yes.
to say, "Well, okay," like, and then, but his touch with watercolor was like dancing, over the surface. And I said, "Did you get special watercolor?" Because I had all kinds. And he said, "Well, I use different kinds." But what I got was he was able to get all this intensity with this very thin wash-like, almost like glazing, if you know that word, never
Mhm.
painting over and over transparently. And so without putting, Van Gogh really slapped the paint in, right? It's heavy and thick. Okay. But to do that with just a wash and have that zing still being there. So I hope that, I picked on that touch finally. And so it's like a pianist, a violinist. Now it's the touch.
Mhm.
It's not just the object or the paint. Now it's your touch on that violin or, any instrument. The same with that brush. You can be heavy handed with it or you can be delicate with it. And it gives you that range to go whack, bang, boom, hit it like in music or back off like a flute. And I love doing that. Now, as it progressed with me, and I kept that voice talking to me, I guess,
Mhm.
uh, I wanted to do what I had never. I thought something was missing in all those abstracts that I was seeing. Right? I said,
Mhm.
"There's still something missing." Okay. Now I know the painting has an up and down, right, and the side to side. And Kokoschka had always talked to me a lot about space. He said, we're on a ball whirling in space. There is no horizon line.
Oh,
We're
okay.
just floating out here in space.
Mhm.
So, he said, so it's important that you create a painting that has space, distance, really. And so I decided I would like it to just float.
And that's
So
what
most of these abstracts I'll use that I'm doing on object is where are the those shapes that I have dancing around there.
yes, I
They're
saw
just floating out there, with just space. So if you realize that and look at it, because you have to have the viewer become aware of how to look at it, because we look in space all day long,
Mhm.
but no one's thinking about it.
No, that's very true. Yes,
It's just
everyone
there,
is
right?
busy and yes.
Yeah. And so we look across to a building or, it's there, but we don't think of the distance of the space or that, wait, everything is just loose. And somehow by gravity, we're kept here on this earth.
Yes,
And
that's
so
so
I
true.
thought, okay, I want to introduce, okay, what I found after I said they had accomplished the up and down and the back and forth and so on. And I said, but there's still something missing. And I'm jumping back here a little bit, Lee. On a visit to Minnesota many years ago and Thanksgiving to visit my family, uh, turns out my father had to go in for a minor surgery and for colonoscopy, right?
Mhm.
And so he was already in the hospital when I got there, and they said, oh, he'll be at home in the morning. And so I went over early in the morning to the hospital, and I went to his room, and he was sweating and uncomfortable. And this was early, so I went to the nurse station. I said, "Well, somebody's got to look at him." She said, "Oh, his doctor won't be until about 11 o'clock." I said, "You're coming with me right now," and I actually pretty much dragged her into that room. Well, immediately the whistles were blowing and things were happening. They
Oh,
took him away,
mhm.
and then the doctor did arrive, and I was with my mother, and we were waiting. Remember, he was supposed to come home. Well, hours went by, and this doctor came out, whom I had never met, and he said, "We lost him. I'm sorry. I can't.
Oh,
A major artery burst, and
mhm.
so I I followed it up, and, clamped it and tried to, but it kept bursting. until it got to his heart, and there's nothing more we could do. But he was still alive. So then they brought him out, and I went into the room. But I held his hand and said, "If you can hear me, squeeze my hand." And he would do that. But he never opened his eyes again. The doctor was amazed that he was still alive. And so he lasted really through that day. And then that was that. So everything was arranged very quickly. And obviously went to the funeral home. And so I remember a trip to Paris seeing face masks of famous people like Voltaire wore. And so I didn't know anything about that really, but I called a former teacher of mine who was in a place called Wyzetta, Lee.
Yes, I heard of that, of course.
And so he was there, and I said, Paul Granlund, a marvelous, marvelous sculptor. I said, "How do I do this?" And he said, "Well, I wouldn't want to do it, but here's what you do. Get a bowl, go to the hardware and get a package of plaster, get a wide brush, and some Vaseline." I said, "So what do I do now?" "Okay, sir, were you your father, right?" Because he hadn't been embalmed. So when I went there in the morning, I had to wash up and do all the things you're supposed to do. I thought I'd never seen a dead person. I don't even like to pick up a dead mouse. So this was like,
yes.
how am I going to do this? So I went to the local bar and restaurant that my father was friends with the owner, and I'd known all my life. So I had 2 double scotches. and said, "Okay, I'm ready." And so I went in there, and what it was, I had to plug his nose, right? And then put the Vaseline on his face. I had to put it on very thin so that I wouldn't be casting the Vaseline with the plaster, right? And so I had to do it like a barber would, I guess. They'll put this all over very thin, and then next, I took the bowl, I put the bowl, put the plaster of Paris in there, water, and he said, "Stir it so it gets thick and heavy." So I was doing that. I get it. Okay, not that. He said, "Now you take that wide brush and you have to slap it onto your father's face to break any air bubbles that might happen." And I said, "Dad, I never ever slapped you. I hope you know I'm doing okay here." And I could hear his voice saying, just don't screw this up." So whack, 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 and now you just keep putting that plaster on and over. You get about a ½ inch thick, and it's warm to the touch. So you keep touching it until it's cool, maybe 20 minutes. And now the moment comes where you're going to lift that off and hope none of the plaster stuck to the face, right? So actually it came out fully clean. And then when I left there after the funeral, I took the cast to my friend Paul Granlund, who very generously cast 3 copies in bronze. So Lee, next time I come down to see you, I'll bring it to show you. Actually, I thought there was a business could be done. I mean, who wants a photograph of a dead person, right? But you could have a face mask done, and you can have it done in any, plastic or this or that, you want. And it's exactly precise, shows everything. But I'm not a business guy to set that up with funeral parlor, but I have that. And now what I'm getting at is, I said, okay, people have, an up and down. You're up and down, but you have side to side. You have a backside, the 3rd dimension, but you never see it. You never see your backside at the same time. So you don't see the 3rd dimension. But Picasso tried it in Cubism. No, as he was unflapping everything. If only you look at things, he'd bring a flap around like a box, another flap and another flap. You follow me, sort of? Okay, you're shaking your head, I get it. Okay. I mean, he didn't solve it, but he was trying to get a 3rd dimension on a 2-dimensional surface. Okay. And I said, okay, well, they guys did pretty good, so that's not for me to do. What's missing? And now with my father, the thing was, as I was doing what I was doing, I thought, my father's not here. This is just a shell. Where'd my dad go?
Mm-hmm.
We want to call it spirit, soul,
Mm-hmm.
because the body was there.
Mm-hmm.
What was missing?
Yes.
You know? And so I thought, okay, living creatures, there you two are, you pulsate, but you can't see it. Your heart's beating,
Mm-hmm.
your lungs are going, but you don't see it physically, right?
Yes,
But
true.
it's pulsating. Said, I have to make the darn things pulsate. Then I've got something. Because they've done all the other, and I'm doing it in a little different way. So I'm not looking like any of them. But yet, if I could make this thing pulsate, that was what we're trying to do. Every time we do any kind of painting, is take a dead canvas and give it some life. Whatever you're painting, right? You want it to have a vitality and a life. And people have done it in realism, trying to really recreate the person or whatever, you know.
So that they
It's
feel the
make
pain.
believe like here it really is. Now I'm trying to make it fly off that canvas, right into you, right? And tear into your emotions, you
Yes,
know, rip them open. I'm trying to create ecstasy for you. I
yes.
want paradise. I want joy. I want bliss, but I mostly want ecstasy that you go, you swoon.
Wow, that's
That'd
one.
be the happy day when some lady looks at my painting and faints.
Yes. I saw
It-
your paintings. It's very impressive. It's beautiful. I think people should really see your paintings. It's very wonderful. It's phenomenal. Yes,
Well,
and
thank
you
you.
can feel it, the beautiful colors, so bright. So it does give you this beautiful, like this joyful feeling. It makes you feel wonderful. And it makes you think that what is it saying to you? So people should definitely look at your painting, Mr. Wayne. And sorry,
Ensrud.
Ensrud,
No, it's really Ensrud.
Ensrud.
Like
Ensrud.
rude. Ensrud.
Oh,
Ensrud.
Ensrud,
Ensrud.
Yeah.
Wayne Ensrud. Okay, people remember that. I think you have a very wonderful. This is a very. You've been through so much. You have achieved so much. I think it's phenomenal, and you're definitely someone to look up to. When I read your biography, I was like, wow. So it's an honor to talk to you.
And Wayne, it was not easy for me to find your biggest fan in the world here. I just want you to understand that, okay? I found her on very short notice, your biggest fan. It was not easy.
Well, my response, what is your name, young lady?
Karishma Silvana Kanhai.
We're going to call her Carrie.
Okay,
You're
that
from
works.
India, right?
I'm Indian, Japanese, Korean.
Well, my wife is, mother's Korean.
Yeah, like okay, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if I weren't married to Lisa, I'd like to take you to dinner
Oh my, okay.
and
I
do a
think
painting
that's
because
something to thank you so much.
you are extraordinarily beautiful. So I
Thank you.
also, well, Lee knows this sort of, I mean, I also do representational work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been doing portraits recently of friends with other people because I broke my hip and my thigh bone, so I've been really not in my studio because I paint standing up.
Oh, okay.
So I've been doing smaller pieces here. So people have sent me photos of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
One was a donkey, sheep, cats, birds, and so one that came the other day, a lady and her husband who own, I think, 6 of my paintings and I think 3 of Lisa's, asked me if, and this lady is partially blind, so it's amazing that she can see what's going on here.
Yes.
And but so he sent this photo, which shows the husband, the wife, and their daughter standing behind. So I just finished that yesterday. You know, these are, where is it? Here it is, just a moment.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I wish everyone
Can you
could
see
see
it?
Yeah, yeah. Move it back just to drop. Move it back a drop. That's probably better. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Wow, that's wonderful. I love the green hair and the blue green. here it almost looks like the ocean. Like I love it. I love it. Wonderful.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't copy the photograph because his shirt was really a deep blue and black. But I realized if I'd done that, it would take over the whole surface. You wouldn't look at things. Oh, this is a friend also
Oh,
owns our paintings. People we've never met, but his he he's a famous film producer in LA.
okay.
He also has he has an animal rescue place, and this is his favorite doggy, and just died.
Oh,
So here's Pee Wee.
oh, look at the eyes.
We have a dog. We have a dog like that. That's our
Oh,
mascot. You know that?
really? Oh my
Like
goodness.
a what's it called, a Mexican Chihuahua toy
Yeah,
Chihuahua,
Wow,
right?
this
that's
is Pee Wee
so
the Chihuahua.
cute.
Yeah, we have one like that too. I
But
mean,
but the eyes are so beautiful. It looks like as if he's looking at you.
You see, I don't do just non-object paintings, but uh, what I've done with Lee so far is stayed pretty much in that realm, the non-object, because it's the newest work and the work that I have really given these last 10, 12 years to, and still
Mhm.
going because um, I don't repeat. If you ever look at my website, which shows a tremendous number, I think there are 365 abstracts on there, non-object. A lot of painters, get a little formula, and all they do is paint that formula with, they slight variations, but they don't move away from it very much.
Mhm.
Um, with dealers, sometimes I would have a problem because I refuse to be stuck like that. And they say,
Yes.
"Oh, this piece sells. Can you do more like that?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Well, no, because if I don't have a passion, I don't want to do it.
Of course,
I
I
can
completely
technically do it,
understand that. Yes.
but it won't come from within. I can, got to go with this voice,
Yes.
they're helping me out, and uh, okay, but just so that I mean, I can do look-alike pieces, you know, and so on, and but the studio is full of constructions, all these pieces, the world that you mentioned that I've been through a lot, that
Yes.
I've explored
Mm-hmm.
really almost um, in order. In other words, I don't go back fully to the Renaissance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I sort of pick up with Courbet, and then moving Corot, then comes Van Gogh, right? And and with that comes the Impressionists. Monet is my favorite, but you have Manet and Pissarro, and a whole group there. And then here comes Kokoschka coming out of Van Gogh, and that realm is going on, but that gets crossed over uh, by the French coming along. Well, Picasso wasn't French, but anyway, so you have the School of Paris, let's put it that way. And
Mm-hmm.
so they broke in, right, and started to get all the notice. But in Europe, it was split because there was Eastern Europe where Kokoschka was, which had a certain audience, right? And then you
Yeah.
had the Paris group with their audience, right? And they never integrated very much. So the MoMA, uh, I haven't been to the new one, but I don't think it's changed that much. It's essentially the School of Paris, right? So when they had it here on 53rd Street, they had one fairly small room for the expressionists. In other words, Kokoschka, and Van Gogh, just one small room.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the museum is mostly the School of Paris, right?
Oh wow, that's
artists, but there's very few from that Germanic world. They just had one little box room,
yeah.
and so they haven't put that much attention to that aspect,
Mm-hmm.
of painting. And now because museums having exhibitions, well, not now, they can't have them, but
Yes, of
before
course. Now,
they would have traveling shows, so you got to see pieces. But I mean, I've never seen a large Virgil show except in Europe and on. So we don't get the experience, of much that's out there. So I've just gone along because I had my Matisse and Picasso strain, where Picasso, I never picked up much of anything except his energy. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not terribly interested in a lot of what he does, weeping women. And, a lot of it's pretty angry and,
Very angry.
Terrifying.
Yes, and you're all about joy, so that's nice.
Yeah, but Matisse came along with all those Fauvist, so-called, wild beast colors.
Yeah.
Although I think his greatness, Lee, also was in those paper cutouts. He got ill, so he couldn't paint. He took to the scissor and did something like nobody's ever seen ever before. And that was a wonderful way to go out. I mean, what he was doing was sublime
Wow.
to me.
Yes.
You look at the last couple years for Kokoschka, this is an angry man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean Picasso, not Picasso. But he was also upset because he had this prostate operation. Because he always had women around him and very sexual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly he couldn't be a stallion anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, his manhood, if you will.
Yeah. It's also like from within that comes without, and that shows that's the art.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
the
yeah.
word I think you use, I use the whole thing is how does it make you feel?
How does it make you feel? Yeah.
It would be like a meal, music, meeting a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you meet some people like I met Lee shortly, now I'm meeting you,
Mm-hmm.
and I can tell even through this machinery that you're empathetic, you're compassionate, you're loving, and I like all those qualities. I know I've been in rooms or meet certain people, you think we all have,
Yeah.
and they exhaust you.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
They
yeah.
just tire you.
All met at least one person like that.
Yeah, right. They just suck
Yes.
it out of you.
Yes.
So,
You cannot
and
hide
so,
energy. You feel it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
what
I always heard, I always heard that, I have friends of mine, I had this one particular guy, and I asked him, he never liked crowds. So I asked him why he didn't like the crowds. And he said, it's not the crowds, it's the people in the crowds.
Oh, see?
Anyhow,
Yes.
I think we're gonna have to wrap this up,
Mhm.
okay? Zoom
having
just
too
sent
much
a note.
fun.
So,
It was a lot of fun.
You're
so,
very insightful, young lady. I thank you for really looking carefully and,
Thank you.
and being aware and able to express it. I feel I have a little bit of a fan over there.
Well,
Yes, of course. I'm a big fan of your work.
big fan.
Absolutely. Yes.
she's actually gonna be, she's gonna be president of our new Ensrud fan club,
Yes.
okay? So,
I take it. Do we get t-shirts?
we will try.
Yes.
Anyhow, so we'd like to thank our very special guest here, Mr. Wayne here, for his patience and his telling of his very interesting life story and what got him to paint the way he does and get into this career. We'd like to thank his lovely wife, Lisa, for stopping by and helping out as well. And my assistant here, Carrie, to give us a hand as well. So if anyone is interested in his work, please contact us directly and we'll be happy to assist you and answer any questions you have. And of course, as he said, he does commission work. So if you have a little doggy or something like that, you want to have a lifetime portrait of, please contact us. And we're going to be having other regular artists that we represent on a regular basis. So please make sure that you tune in for our next show. They're pretty much going to be every Sunday at 8 o'clock on the world famous WOR 710 radio station. And until next time, we will talk to you shortly. Okay. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Wayne. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was wonderful, wonderful. I was a little nervous, but coming out here unprepared. But thank you for guiding me.
You did great. You did great.
Questions were smart and sharp and something I could answer. And thank you if I mumble a bit and
Did when you did your animation work, did any of your characters take off, or did they just tell you what to do, sort of thing?
Well, no, the only characters that I did was for that Computer in Mind of Man. In fact, if you, what is it, you Google it? Lisa will send you a link because She did that months ago. Showed it was there. I was, and it shows the little figure that I created.
Okay.
That goes through the film, and you'll see that. But I've never been commercial in any way, Lee. Uh, I just move on. That
Mhm.
means I don't knock on doors or ring bells. If somebody calls me up and it's interesting, like okay, this happened just a few weeks ago. Out of nowhere, uh, we got an email from a young fellow in Verona, Italy, and he'd seen my painting. And so his family is in the risotto business, right? Like rice, but they take their funds and doing well, I guess, and they now have a vineyard. So they're producing wine, and this just now. And so he came to me and said, "Would I design a label?" And so I said, "Fine." So we made the arrangements financially and so on. And what I do, if Lee asks me a question or do I follow what somebody does, he's met me once or he knows I don't follow anybody.
Okay.
Well, no, I just leave.
That I
Whatever.
like.
If the job's like that, I leave, whatever. I say, look, here's the brush, you can do it.
Yes.
I don't want to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
You're hiring me for my imagination, so you got to let me loose. And if you don't like it, you get rid of me.
I like that.
And I do a lot of commissions and other things like that too, stupidly sometimes. But I'll just say, look, I'll do it, and you don't owe me anything. But here's the price if you want it when I'm done. If not, I've been free to paint what I want, and you're not obligated in any way to me. Then I'm free to go about it. But luckily, all these years, no one didn't take the job. You know, whatever I did,
Yes, yes,
no one
yes.
rejected it. So it's
Yes.
worked out pretty well. And in this case too, they just left me alone. But we sent what, how many, 10? Yeah, we sent in 10 different designs. And they were so confused by the beauty, as they said, of all of them, that they had a hard time with the family figuring out, which one.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's what you want. Yeah, that's
And
what.
so now so we just did that, and the bottles on their way here, they labeled, the labeling was on last Friday. Yeah, these are the first wines that they've ever done. So we bottled Tuesday, and labels went on Friday, and now a case or two will be shipped. But it's going to take forever on a boat.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
Wayne, our Zoom thing is up, so we got to go. So
Okay, buddy.
we will be in touch.
We'll see you soon.
We'll let you know when it airs. It's probably going to air a week from Sunday, probably on the 11th. But if you want to just call me or text me that week, I'll confirm that with you.
What
Okay.
time do you on usually?
8 o'clock.
Okay.
Evening or morning?
Yeah, 8 p.m. you said, right?
8 p.m. We're on typically WOR 710. They're the #1 talk station here in New York. So we're scheduled to be. I think your episode will probably be a week from Sunday. So I think it's this Sunday's the 4th. So it should be on the 11th. Okay, probably. Okay, we'll keep you posted. So just check in with us that week. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay,
Sounds
thank you.
great. Thank you,
Okay,
guys.
guys. Take care. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.